Please do not make him read it again, the man said from the doorway. I looked up from the book in front of 8-year-old Oliver Brooks and found his father watching us with an expression caught somewhere between concern and frustration. Oliver immediately lowered his eyes. 5 seconds earlier, he had been trying to read a sentence about a boy exploring an abandoned lighthouse. He had reached the word enormous, stopped, tried twice, and gone completely silent. I was not planning to, I said. The man stepped into the children's reading room. He has been stuck on that paragraph all week. Dad, Oliver's voice was barely audible. I know, buddy. I am not upset. Somehow, that made Oliver look even more embarrassed. I had seen that reaction dozens of times during the literacy program at the public library. Adults thought struggling readers needed more correction. Usually, what they needed first was somewhere safe to be wrong. I closed the book. Oliver looked surprised. We are done with that one. I failed it, he said. Books are not tests. School books are. Fair point. I stood and walked to a nearby shelf. Then we need something that does not feel like school. I pulled out a graphic adventure about 2 astronauts searching for a missing satellite and placed it in front of him. Oliver studied the cover. This looks easier. Maybe. Maybe not. You only have to read one sentence. His father remained near the doorway. Caleb, right? Caleb Morgan. Nathan Brooks. He nodded toward Oliver. His teacher says he understands everything when someone reads to him, but when he has to read out loud, the words get harder when somebody is listening, I said. Oliver looked at me. That told me I had guessed correctly. I opened the new book. One sentence. You choose which one. Oliver searched the page until he found something short. He read it slowly. He stumbled once, stopped, then looked at me as if waiting for correction. I waited instead. He tried the word again and got it. That counts, I said. It was only 7 words. 7 more than 0. Oliver looked back at the page. Can I do another? That sounds dangerously ambitious. He smiled. Nathan did too. Oliver read a second sentence, then a third. By the 5th, he was leaning closer to the book instead of away from it. When he finished the page, he looked almost offended by his own success. That was not hard. Do not tell the book. You will hurt its feelings. Oliver laughed. Across the room, Nathan lowered his head for a second. When he looked up again, something in his expression had changed. Relief, maybe, or exhaustion finally loosening its grip. The library announcement came over the speakers, reminding everyone that we would close in 15 minutes. Oliver groaned. Can I finish the next page? Next time. When is next time? Before I could answer, Nathan approached the table. Up close, he looked about 37, dressed in work boots, dark jeans, and a charcoal jacket with a construction company's logo embroidered near the chest. Oliver, pack your backpack. I need to talk to Caleb for a minute. Oliver carried the book toward the checkout desk. Nathan waited until he was several feet away. I owe you an apology. For what? Walking in like you were doing something wrong. You were protecting your son. Sometimes I think I do too much of that. He glanced toward Oliver. Reading used to be something he loved. Then school got harder. Every time he struggled, he started believing he was bad at it. He is not. I know that. Nathan gave a tired smile. Getting him to believe it is the problem. I began stacking the books on the table. Confidence usually comes back slower than it disappears. Would you help him? I stopped. I already do. That is what the literacy program is for. I mean regularly. Nathan hesitated, as though asking for help was something he had practiced avoiding. Twice a week, maybe. 20 or 30 minutes. I can pay you. You do not need to pay me. Caleb. Nathan. For the first time, he laughed. It was brief, but it changed his whole face. You always argue this quickly with people you just met. Only construction engineers who interrupt reading sessions. Civil engineer. That sounds even more argumentative. Oliver returned with the book checked out and tucked under his arm. Are we coming back? Nathan looked at me instead of answering him. There was something unexpectedly vulnerable in the question he had asked, as if helping Oliver read mattered for reasons I did not understand yet. I looked at Oliver, then back at his father. Tuesday at 5:30, I said. Oliver grinned. Nathan exhaled slowly. Thank you. At the time, I thought I had agreed to help a boy read for 30 minutes twice a week. I did not know those 30 minutes would become dinners, that a dark green mug would eventually appear in a kitchen cabinet for me, or that Nathan Brooks would become the person I started looking for every time the library door opened. Tuesday at 5:28, Oliver was already sitting at the same table with the astronaut book open in front of him. Nathan sat 3 tables away with a laptop, a travel mug, and the determined expression of someone pretending not to watch us. I noticed because every time Oliver stumbled over a word, Nathan stopped typing. "Your dad is listening," I said quietly. Oliver glanced over his shoulder. Nathan immediately looked at his screen. "He does that." "Does what?" "Pretends he is working." From across the room, Nathan said, "I can't hear you." Oliver grinned. "See?" I turned the book toward him. "1 page today? No racing. What if I mess up?" "Then you mess up." He frowned. "That is the advice?" "Excellent advice. Very expensive outside the library." Oliver laughed, and we started. He read slowly, sometimes tracing the line with his finger. When he reached an unfamiliar word, I did not supply it. I asked him to break it into smaller sounds. Sometimes he found the answer. Sometimes he did not. Either way, we kept moving. At the end of 30 minutes, he had finished nearly 2 pages. Nathan closed his laptop. "How did it go?" Oliver answered before I could. "I got 9 words wrong." Nathan's face tightened. "That is okay. And I got about 300 right." Nathan blinked, then looked at me. "That is how we are counting now. It seems more accurate." Oliver packed his book with the satisfaction of someone who had discovered a loophole in a system designed against him. Thursday was better. The following Tuesday was harder. Oliver arrived tired and frustrated after a spelling quiz, and 10 minutes into our session, he pushed the book away. "I cannot do this." Nathan started to rise from his chair. I gave him a small shake of my head. He sat back down. "Okay," I told Oliver. "Then do not." "What?" "Tell me what happens in the picture." He studied the illustration. "The astronaut is trying to fix the communication system." "How do you know?" "Because the antenna is broken." "So you understood the story without reading that paragraph?" "I guess." "Good. Now let us see if the words tell us anything the picture does not." He pulled the book back toward himself. 5 minutes later, he was reading again. When the session ended, Nathan waited while Oliver went to browse the science shelves. "How do you do that?" he asked. "Do what?" "You never seem frustrated with him." "Why would I be?" "Because he gets frustrated with himself." I leaned against the table. "That is exactly why he does not need another person doing it." Nathan looked toward the shelves. "I keep trying to fix it." "You are an engineer." "That sounds occupational." "Civil engineer," he corrected automatically. Still argumentative. He smiled. "At home, I hear him struggle, and I want to give him the word. I know I should wait, but watching him sit there feeling stuck makes you want to rescue him." Nathan's smile disappeared. Yes, there was more weight in that answer than the conversation seemed to require. I did not push. Over the next 2 weeks, our sessions developed a rhythm. Oliver read. I listened. Nathan worked at the next table, except he rarely accomplished as much as he claimed. I learned he drank coffee without sugar and tapped his thumb against his mug whenever Oliver reached a difficult sentence. Nathan learned that I always carried 2 pencils, even though we almost never needed one. One Thursday, Oliver reached the final page of the astronaut book. "Whole page?" I asked. He stared at it. "Without stopping. You can stop whenever you need to. Stopping is not quitting." Nathan's typing stopped. Oliver began. His voice was quiet at first, then steadier. He missed one word, corrected himself, and continued without looking at me. When he finished the last sentence, he stared at the page for a second. "I did it." "You did." Oliver turned toward Nathan. His father was no longer pretending to work. Nathan had one hand over his mouth, and his eyes were brighter than usual. "Dad." Nathan closed the laptop and stood. "That was really good, buddy. It was a whole page." "I know." Oliver smiled as if he had just climbed something enormous. While he packed his backpack, Nathan came closer to me. "Thank you. He did the work. You made him believe he could." Before I could answer, the library lights dimmed briefly, our 5-minute warning before closing. Outside the tall windows, November rain had begun covering the parking lot in silver. Nathan checked his watch. "It is almost 7. Tom got away from us." He looked toward Oliver, then back at me. "We were going home to make dinner." "Sounds like a good plan." Nathan hesitated. Oliver appeared beside us with his backpack over one shoulder. "Caleb can come." Nathan gave him a look. "Oliver." "What?" "He has to eat." I laughed. "Your concern for my survival is touching." Nathan looked unexpectedly uncertain. "You do not have to, obviously. I should probably get home." Oliver frowned. "We are making tacos." "That is unfair information." Nathan smiled, then held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary. You are already here, he said. You might as well eat. I should have heard it as nothing more than a practical invitation after a long reading session. Instead, standing beneath the library lights while rain covered the windows, I found myself wondering why the idea of following Nathan Brooks home felt less like an interruption to my evening and more like the beginning of one. The rain was still falling when I followed Nathan's dark blue SUV through 3 quiet neighborhoods and onto a tree-lined street about 4 miles from the library. His house was a modest 2-story craftsman with warm porch lights, a narrow driveway, and wet maple leaves scattered across the lawn. By the time I parked at the curb, Oliver was already standing inside the open front door. You actually came. You advertised tacos, I said. That creates legal obligations. Nathan appeared behind him carrying 2 grocery bags he had apparently picked up earlier. Please do not teach my son contract law. I am a librarian. We teach everything eventually. Inside, the house felt lived in without feeling cluttered. A pair of work boots sat near the door. Architectural plans were stacked on one end of the kitchen island beside Nathan's laptop. A calendar covered in appointments hung beside the refrigerator. Nathan set the groceries down and pointed toward a stool. You can sit. That sounds suspiciously like you do not trust me in your kitchen. I met you a few weeks ago. You trusted me with your son. Books are your professional territory. Tacos are mine. Oliver dropped his backpack beside the table. Dad makes the same tacos every Thursday. Nathan looked at him. Consistency is a virtue. He means boring, Oliver told me. I laughed and started taking plates from the cabinet Nathan had left open. What are you doing? Nathan asked. Helping. You are a guest. Then consider this aggressive hospitality. He watched me for a second before handing me a stack of napkins. Fine. Set the table. It should have felt awkward. 3 people who had only ever existed together beneath fluorescent library lights suddenly sharing a kitchen. Somehow it did not. Nathan cooked ground beef with onions and seasoning while Oliver grated cheese with more concentration than he usually gave difficult words. I chopped tomatoes after convincing Nathan I could be trusted with a kitchen knife. The rain tapped steadily against the windows, and the room filled with the smell of warm tortillas and cumin. Caleb, Oliver said, do you live by yourself? I do. Do you cook? Sometimes. Nathan glanced over his shoulder. That answer means no. I make excellent scrambled eggs. That is breakfast. Eggs do not know what time it is. Oliver laughed so hard he nearly dropped the cheese. Dinner was simple and loud in a way my apartment never was. Oliver explained the entire plot of the astronaut book between bites. Nathan corrected only the details that became wildly inaccurate. I mostly listened. At one point, Oliver reached for the book he had brought from the library and opened it beside his plate. No reading at dinner, Nathan said. Oliver looked disappointed. That might be the first time I have heard a parent discourage reading, I said. You are not the one cleaning salsa off library books. Fair. After dinner, Nathan started gathering the dishes. I picked up 2 plates. Leave those. You cooked. You helped. I chopped 1 tomato. Heroically. Exactly. Now let me contribute. We ended up side by side at the sink, Nathan washing while I dried. Oliver sat at the kitchen table reading quietly to himself. Every few minutes, I caught Nathan looking toward him. You are doing it again, I said. Doing what? Pretending you are not listening. Nathan smiled without turning around. He is reading voluntarily at the dinner table. Kitchen table now. Technical distinction. Important in libraries and engineering. Nathan handed me a plate. Civil engineering. I knew you would correct me. His smile remained, but then his expression softened. 3 months ago, he stopped reading anything unless school required it. I looked toward Oliver. He still likes stories. I know that now. Nathan lowered his voice. I think I spent so much time trying to help him improve that I forgot he was supposed to enjoy it. Parents are allowed to learn too. That sounds suspiciously forgiving. Do not get used to it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We stood close enough that our shoulders nearly touched whenever he passed me another plate. Nothing happened. Still, I became strangely aware of how warm the kitchen was and how easy it felt to stand there beside him. Oliver eventually closed his book. Can Caleb come next Thursday? Nathan turned from the sink. Caleb has his own life. I know. Oliver looked at me. Do you? Allegedly. Nathan laughed. Do not encourage him. I dried the last plate and set it on the counter. I should get going. Nathan walked me to the front door while Oliver returned to his book. Outside, the rain had softened to a mist. Thanks for staying, Nathan said. Thanks for dinner. It was just tacos. I have had worse Thursdays. Nathan leaned against the doorframe, his expression quieter now. Next Thursday, then? I looked back toward the kitchen, where Oliver was reading without anyone asking him to. Then I looked at Nathan. Next Thursday. Driving home, I told myself I had agreed because Oliver was making progress and routine mattered. But somewhere between Nathan's house and my apartment, I realized I was already looking forward to a dinner that was still 7 days away. The second Thursday dinner should have felt like a repeat of the first, but somewhere between the library and Nathan's kitchen, repetition started becoming routine. Oliver finished his reading session at 6:30, packed his book without asking whether I was coming, and simply said, "Dad bought chicken instead of beef." Nathan looked at me from behind his laptop. "Apparently you are receiving menu updates now. I appreciate professional communication. You are both exhausting." A week later, Thursday dinner happened again. Then, on a Tuesday when Nathan had worked late, he asked whether I wanted to stay after Oliver's session because he had ordered pizza and there was too much for 2 people. "You ordered a medium," I said when I saw the box. "There is absolutely not too much for 2 people." Nathan opened the refrigerator. "Would you like to eat or investigate?" "Both." Oliver pointed at me from the table. "You sound like Dad." Nathan and I looked at each other. Neither of us commented on that. By early December, I stopped remembering exactly which dinner had been accidental and which one had been planned. I knew where Nathan kept the plates. I knew Oliver hated mushrooms, but would eat almost anything covered in shredded cheese. I knew Nathan checked the front door twice every night, once after dinner and again before I left. Nathan learned that I drank coffee with a little cream, that I always removed my watch while washing dishes, and that I could not follow a recipe without changing something. Recipes exist for a reason, he told me one evening as I added smoked paprika to his soup. So do librarians. That sentence makes no sense. Taste it. He did, paused, then handed the spoon back. Acceptable. That sounded painful. I am adapting. After dinner, Oliver sat at the table reading while Nathan answered work emails. I reached automatically for the cabinet above the coffee maker. When I opened it, I stopped. On the lowest shelf sat a dark green ceramic mug I had used during the previous 2 dinners. It had always been on the upper shelf before, mixed among several mismatched cups. Now it sat beside Nathan's plain navy mug. "Did you move this?" I asked. Nathan glanced up from his laptop. "Move what?" I held up the green mug. "This. You always use that one." "I know. So I moved it down there." "Why?" Nathan looked genuinely confused by the question. "Because it is easier to reach. I am 6 feet tall." "Then congratulations. It is still easier." Oliver looked up from his book. "Dad moved it yesterday." Nathan gave him a warning look. "Thank you, Oliver." He washed it twice. "Oliver." I tried not to smile. "Twice." Nathan closed his laptop. There was dust on it. Apparently dangerous amounts. "Can we discuss literally anything else?" I poured coffee into the mug and leaned against the counter. It was such a small thing that I felt ridiculous noticing it. A mug had moved approximately 18 inches. That was all. But when I placed it beside Nathan's, the 2 cups looked strangely deliberate. Later, Oliver finished a full chapter with only 2 pauses. Nathan did not interrupt once. When Oliver finally closed the book, Nathan said, "Nice job," with a calmness that would have been impossible a month earlier. Oliver grinned. "Caleb taught you how to wait." Nathan looked offended. "I knew how to wait." "No, you did not." I raised my coffee. "I am staying out of this." "Coward," Nathan said. Oliver headed upstairs to get ready for bed while Nathan and I cleared the table. I reached for my jacket from the back of a dining chair. "You know," Nathan said, "you could hang that by the door." "I am leaving. I mean when you come over." The words landed quietly between us. Not if. When. Nathan seemed to realize it too because he suddenly became very interested in stacking plates. I carried my green mug to the sink. "You are making a lot of assumptions about my schedule. You keep showing up. You keep feeding me. So this is about free food." "Mostly." Nathan smiled. "Good to know." At the door, he checked the lock, then opened it for me. Cold December air moved across the porch. "Tuesday," he asked. "For reading?" "Reading. Dinner. Whatever we are calling this." I looked past him toward the kitchen. My green mug was drying beside his navy one. Tuesday, I said. Driving home, I realized Nathan had never formally asked me to become part of their routine, and I had never formally agreed. Somehow, the invitations had stopped needing words. There was simply a chair at the table, a place for my jacket near the door, and a dark green mug waiting in a cabinet, as if the house had decided before either of us that I would be coming back. The first Tuesday in December, Oliver surprised both of us by choosing a book without asking me whether it was too difficult. It was an older hardcover adventure novel with a faded blue cover, the kind of book that looked as though it had already belonged to several generations of readers. This one, he said, placing it on the library table. Nathan had been opening his laptop at the next table, but the moment he saw the book, his hand stopped. I noticed. Oliver did not. Good choice, I said. Mom bought it for me. Nathan looked down at his screen. Oliver opened the cover carefully. I never finished it. Then we do not have to finish it today. I want to. We worked through 6 pages. Oliver struggled with a few words, but did not shut down. When he made a mistake, he tried again before looking at me. By the end of the session, he was tired but smiling. Nathan barely touched his laptop. That evening, dinner at their house was quieter than usual. Oliver carried the book to the table until Nathan reminded him about the salsa incident that had never actually happened, but had somehow become household law. After we ate, Oliver went upstairs to shower while Nathan and I cleared the dishes. I opened the cabinet and took down my green mug. Nathan was standing at the sink when I asked, "Was that Melissa's book?" He became still. For a moment, I wondered whether I had crossed a line. Then, he nodded. She bought it for Oliver about 2 months before she died. I set the mug on the counter. I am sorry. Thank you. Nathan turned on the faucet, then turned it off again without washing anything. We were not married anymore when she died. I waited. Nathan leaned against the counter. We separated when Oliver was 4. There was no dramatic ending. We just eventually admitted we worked better as parents than as a couple. His expression softened. Melissa was the first person I told that I was attracted to men. She already knew something between us had changed. Somehow she made that conversation easier than I deserved. Sounds like she cared about you. She did. I cared about her too. Just differently by then. He looked toward the stairs. We shared custody. Holidays, school meetings, birthdays. We became better friends after the divorce than we had been during the last year of our marriage. And then you lost her. Nathan nodded. Oliver lost her. That is the part one still do not know how to fix. Maybe you cannot. He looked at me. That is a very librarian answer. We specialize in uncomfortable truths. A faint smile appeared, then disappeared. After she died, I kept thinking I had to make everything normal for him. Same school, same house, same traditions. I wanted him to feel like his family was still complete. Was that what he needed, or what you needed? Nathan exhaled slowly. You really do ask difficult questions for someone who gets free tacos. The tacos buy honesty. He looked toward the dining table where the old book rested beside Oliver's backpack. Sometimes I wonder if he looks at other families and thinks something is missing from ours. Something is missing, I said gently. Nathan's eyes returned to mine. Melissa, missing her does not mean there is something wrong with the family you still have. He was silent. I continued. Different does not mean incomplete. Nathan stared at me long enough that I became aware of the refrigerator humming behind us. You believe that? I do. Even when different is complicated? Especially then. Something changed in his expression, small but unmistakable. Before either of us could say more, Oliver came downstairs wearing pajama pants and carrying the old book. Can I read another page? Nathan looked at him, then at me. It is almost bedtime. Oliver waited. A month earlier, Nathan would have worried about tomorrow morning, the school schedule, the possibility of frustration. Instead, he pulled out a chair. 1 page. Oliver sat between us at the kitchen table and began reading. His voice caught twice. Nobody corrected him too quickly. When he finished, Nathan smiled. Good job. Oliver closed the book. Mom picked good books. Nathan swallowed. Yeah, she really did. Later, after Oliver went upstairs, Nathan walked me to the front door. My jacket was hanging from the hook he had suggested I use weeks earlier. I reached for it, but Nathan spoke before I could put it on. Caleb, yeah. I have not talked about Melissa like that with anyone in a long time. You do not owe me an explanation. I know. He stepped closer, not enough to touch, only enough that the distance between us felt deliberate. That is why I wanted to give you one. I did not know what to say, so I simply nodded. Nathan opened the door. Cold air entered from the porch. Thursday, he asked. Thursday. I drove home thinking about the old book, the green mug, and the way Nathan had trusted me with a part of his life that had nothing to do with reading lessons. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped measuring my place in that house by how much Oliver needed my help. And for the first time, I wondered whether Nathan had stopped measuring it that way too. Thursday arrived with the first real snow of December, and for the first time since our dinners had become routine, I was not at the Brooks house. The library had scheduled a community literacy workshop months earlier, and by 7:30, I was standing in the meeting room, helping parents choose reading exercises while snow gathered against the windows. I told myself I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Still, when my phone buzzed during cleanup, I checked it immediately. Nathan had sent a photograph of my dark green mug sitting empty beside his navy one on the kitchen counter. Under it were 4 words. "Your coffee is getting cold." I smiled before I could stop myself. I typed back, "Save it for Tuesday," then stared at the message longer than necessary. The next afternoon, Nathan arrived at the library to pick up Oliver. He was still wearing his charcoal work jacket, and there were melting snowflakes on his shoulders. Oliver walked directly toward me, carrying Melissa's old book. The house was too quiet yesterday. Nathan stopped behind him. "Oliver." "What?" "Caleb had work." "I know." It was still quiet. I looked at Nathan. He suddenly became extremely interested in brushing snow from his sleeve. "Did you read without me?" I asked Oliver. 3 pages. 3. That helped. Nathan finally looked up. I waited before giving him the words. "How long?" "Long enough." Oliver shook his head. He counted to 5 in his head. "Progress comes in many forms," I said. Nathan gave me a look, but there was a smile underneath it. Tuesday evening, I returned to their house, and something about walking through the front door felt different. I hung my jacket on the hook near Nathan's without thinking. My phone battery was low, so I reached behind the small table beside the couch and found the charger I had left there 2 weeks earlier. Then I walked into the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and took down the green mug. I stopped with it in my hand. Jacket hook, charger, mug. None of those things had been discussed. None had been formally offered as proof that I belonged there. They had simply accumulated around me. Nathan entered carrying a pot from the stove. "Why are you staring at your coffee cup?" "I am having a complicated relationship with kitchen storage." "Should I be concerned?" I held up the mug. "When did this become mine?" Nathan set the pot down. "Probably when you started complaining whenever I used it." I complained once. Memorably. Oliver appeared with his book. "Dad would not let me use it Thursday." Nathan closed his eyes briefly. "Thank you, Oliver." "Why?" I asked. Oliver answered first. He said it was Caleb's. The kitchen went strangely quiet. Nathan looked at me. "It is a mug. Apparently a legally protected one. Do not start." I smiled and poured coffee. Dinner was baked chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Oliver read 2 paragraphs aloud after we finished eating, then disappeared upstairs to find another book. Nathan and I cleared the table. Our routine returned so easily that Thursday's absence suddenly felt larger than one missed meal. "He really noticed I was not here," I said. Nathan rinsed a plate. "He notices everything. You sent me a picture of an empty mug. That was evidence of wasted coffee." "Of course." He handed me the plate, but neither of us let go immediately. Our fingers remained on opposite edges for one quiet second. Nathan looked at my hand, then at me. "I noticed too," he said. The humor disappeared from my voice. The quiet. "Yeah." He released the plate and turned back toward the sink. "I kept thinking I heard the front door. Then I remembered you were working." I dried the plate slowly. "You survived." "Barely." The green beans were especially difficult. I laughed, but something warm had settled beneath the joke. Oliver returned carrying another book and rescued us from whatever might have come next. Later, after he went upstairs for bed, I found Nathan checking the front door as usual. Once, then again. "Still twice?" I said. "It is called being responsible. It is called checking twice." He leaned against the door. "You notice too much." Occupational hazard. I reached for my jacket, then paused. My charger was still beside the couch. For some reason, I left it there. Nathan noticed, but said nothing. At the door, he asked, "Thursday?" "I will be here." His expression softened in a way that made the answer feel more important than scheduling dinner. Good. Driving home, I realized the dangerous part was not that Oliver had noticed one empty Thursday. It was that Nathan had noticed it too. I had entered their lives because a boy needed help reading. But somewhere between the jacket hook, the charger, and the green mug Nathan would not let anyone else use, my absence had started leaving a space behind. Thursday came, but dinner did not. Oliver finished his reading session at 6:15, closed Melissa's old book, and smiled at me with the quiet confidence that had replaced the embarrassment I remembered from our first afternoon together. "Only one word," he said. "One difficult word," I corrected. "Still counts." I looked toward Nathan, expecting the familiar announcement about whatever he planned to cook. Instead, he closed his laptop and slipped it into his bag. "We should get going." Oliver looked confused. "What about dinner?" "We are eating at home. Caleb is coming, right?" Nathan avoided my eyes. "Not tonight." The answer was simple, but something about his tone made the room feel colder. "Did I miss something?" I asked. "No. I just have work to finish." I knew immediately that was not true. Nathan had spent weeks inviting me over even when deadlines followed him home. Still, I let them leave. Tuesday was the same. Reading session. Nathan at the next table. No dinner invitation. No joke about tacos. No mention of my green mug. By the following Thursday, I was done pretending not to notice. After Oliver finished, Nathan told him to browse the science shelves while we packed up. "Are you avoiding me?" I asked. Nathan froze with one hand on his laptop. "No. That answer would be more convincing if you looked at me." He did. "Caleb, 2 weeks ago, you sent me a picture because I missed one dinner. Now you have canceled 3. I did not cancel anything. Right? Because technically we never called it a plan." His jaw tightened. "That is not fair." "Then tell me what changed." Nathan glanced toward the shelves where Oliver was browsing far enough away not to hear us. "He is getting attached to you." For a second, I almost laughed because the answer seemed so obvious. "Nathan, I have been helping him twice a week for months. This is different." "How?" "He talks about you at breakfast. He asks whether you are coming over before I even know what day it is. When you missed that Thursday, he noticed before dinner started." "You noticed too?" Nathan looked away. "That is not the point." "Maybe it is." He zipped the laptop bag. "People can leave adults. Adults recover. Kids remember." The words landed harder than I expected. "So this is about protecting Oliver from me. It is about protecting him from losing another person. I am not Melissa." "I know that." "Then stop treating me like I am already halfway out the door." Nathan's expression tightened. "You cannot promise you will always be here. Neither can you." He said nothing. "Nobody can promise that," I continued. "That does not make caring about someone a mistake." "You do not understand." "Then explain it." Nathan lowered his voice. "After Melissa died, Oliver spent months asking when things would feel normal again. He stopped sleeping well. He stopped wanting to go places we used to go together. I watched him learn that someone can be part of your everyday life, and then suddenly not be there anymore." His eyes met mine. "I cannot knowingly build another person into his world and pretend there is no risk." My anger softened, but the hurt remained. "You already did." Nathan went still. "The jacket hook. My charger. The dinners. The mug you would not let anyone else use. You did not just let Oliver get used to me." I stepped closer to the table. "You got used to me too. Caleb, what do you see me as?" Silence. I waited. Nathan's eyes dropped toward the table. "That is not a simple question. It is from where I am standing. I am trying to do what is best for my son. I know, but I am asking about you." He looked at me again, and whatever answer was there never reached his mouth. That hurt more than if he had simply told me I was wrong. I picked up the book Oliver had left on the table and closed it carefully. "I think I understand." "No, you do not." "Then you should have answered." Oliver returned carrying a science book, and both of us immediately stepped back from the conversation. Nathan gave him a smile that almost looked normal. I could not manage one. "See you Tuesday?" Oliver asked. I swallowed. "I will be here." Nathan looked at me, but I turned toward the circulation desk before he could say anything. That night, my apartment felt quieter than I remembered. I made coffee and reached automatically for a mug, then thought of the dark green one sitting in Nathan's cabinet. My charger was still beside his couch. For weeks, I had mistaken those small things for evidence that I had a place there. Maybe Nathan had seen them as warnings. Tuesday came. Oliver read better than ever. Nathan barely spoke to me. When they left, I stayed behind reorganizing books that did not need reorganizing. Near closing time, I found Melissa's old book on the reading table. Oliver had accidentally left it open to the chapter we were working through. I stared at the unfinished page and realized Nathan was right about one thing. People could leave. What he had not understood was that sometimes pushing someone away created exactly the absence you were trying to prevent. The library had been closed for nearly 20 minutes when I heard someone knock on the glass entrance door. I was still in the reading room, staring at Melissa's old book where Oliver had left it open on the table. For one irrational second, I expected to see Oliver coming back for it. Instead, Nathan stood outside beneath the entry light, alone, his charcoal jacket dusted with snow. I considered pretending I had not heard him. Then he knocked again. I carried the book to the entrance and unlocked the door. "We are closed." "I know." Oliver forgot this. I held up the book. "I know that too." Nathan stepped inside when I moved aside. "He is with my sister." I locked the door again. "Then why are you here?" Nathan looked toward the reading room. "Because I handled this badly." "That narrows it down." "I deserve that." We walked back to the table where months earlier Oliver had struggled to read a single sentence. I placed the book between us. Nathan rested his hand on its faded cover. He read almost an entire chapter at home Sunday. That is good. He got stuck 6 times. That is also good. Nathan gave me a confused look. Getting stuck is not the problem. Believing you cannot continue is. Nathan looked down at the book. You taught him that. He learned it himself. You gave him room to learn it. His voice became quieter, and I think I missed the lesson. I waited. Nathan pulled out a chair, but did not sit. I spent years thinking my job was to remove every risk from Oliver's life. After Melissa died, I thought if I kept everything stable enough, predictable enough, he would never have to feel that kind of loss again. You cannot engineer that. A faint smile appeared. Civil engineer. You came here after closing to correct me? Habit. The smile disappeared. No. I came because you were right. I folded my arms. About which part? I already let you become important. He finally met my eyes. Not just Oliver. The room seemed to grow quieter. Nathan, let me finish before I lose my nerve. I nodded. The first time I asked you to help him, you were his librarian. Then you became the person he wanted to tell when he finished a page. Then you started coming to dinner. Nathan glanced toward the book. Somewhere in there, I started waiting for Thursdays too. I said nothing. I knew which mug you liked. I noticed when your charger stayed beside the couch. I started buying enough food for 3 without checking whether you were coming. He exhaled slowly. Then you missed one dinner, and the house felt wrong. I remembered his photograph of the empty mug. So you pushed me away. Because I got scared. Of Oliver getting attached. That was the excuse I could explain. Nathan stepped closer. The truth is, I was attached too. The words landed softly, but they changed everything. What happens if this does not work? He asked. I do not know. What happens if you leave someday? I do not know that either. Nathan nodded as if he had expected those answers. That used to be enough reason for me not to try. I looked at the open book. Oliver used to think getting one word wrong meant he could not finish the page. Nathan followed my gaze. Exactly. He gave a quiet, almost embarrassed laugh. You taught my son not to be afraid of getting a word wrong. I think I am the one who still needs that lesson. I felt some of the anger I had been carrying finally loosen. I cannot promise you forever, Nathan. I know. And I cannot promise Oliver will never be disappointed by me. I know that too. Then what can you accept? Nathan looked directly at me. Today, tomorrow, dinner on Thursday. Whatever comes after that, 1 page at a time. I smiled despite myself. That metaphor was dangerously close to being good. I practiced in the parking lot. How long? 11 minutes. I laughed, and Nathan's shoulders relaxed. Then he became serious again. I stopped asking you to dinner because I was afraid you had already become family. My smile faded. Maybe you should have asked whether that scared me too. Does it? I looked around the quiet reading room, at the table where this had begun, at the book between us. Yes. Nathan's expression fell slightly. I continued, but I still kept coming back. Something warm returned to his face. He reached toward me slowly, leaving enough space for me to decide. I closed the distance and took his hand. His fingers tightened gently around mine. For several seconds, that was enough. Then Nathan leaned closer, paused, and I met him halfway. The kiss was brief and soft, less a declaration than an answer to a question we had both been avoiding. When we separated, Nathan smiled. Thursday, are you asking me to tutor Oliver or come to dinner? Dinner. Good. I picked up Melissa's book and handed it to him. And give him this. Nathan took it, but kept hold of my hand with the other. One more chapter? One more chapter. As I watched him leave through the library doors, I understood that neither of us had solved the problem Nathan feared. People could still leave. Lives could still change. There were no guarantees waiting for us beyond that snowy parking lot. But for the first time, Nathan was no longer treating uncertainty like a reason to close the book. 1 year later, I unlocked the Brooks house at 6:12 on a Thursday evening with a grocery bag in one hand and my library satchel over my shoulder. The key still made me smile sometimes. Nathan had given it to me in May after I spent 20 minutes waiting on the porch because he was stuck in traffic. He had called it practical. Oliver had called it obvious. I had learned that Oliver was usually right about these things. I am home, I called, then stopped in the entryway. Home. I had started saying it months ago without noticing. Kitchen, Nathan answered. I hung my jacket on the hook beside his and walked in. At 9 years old, Oliver sat at the table with a thick adventure novel open in front of him, reading silently while Nathan worked on his laptop at the kitchen island. The faded blue book Melissa had bought him rested on a nearby shelf, no longer unfinished. Oliver had completed it in March and immediately started something harder. How many pages? I asked. 32. Since school. Since dinner yesterday. Nathan looked up. Please do not encourage him to stay awake all night. I work at a library. Encouraging unreasonable amounts of reading is practically required. You said that about teaching everything. We have many responsibilities. I carried the groceries to the counter and opened the cabinet above the coffee maker. My dark green mug sat beside Nathan's navy one exactly where it had for nearly a year. I took both down. Nathan closed his laptop and walked over. You bought groceries? You said we needed pasta. I said I was going to buy pasta. And yet somehow I knew you would forget. I am beginning to regret giving you a key. You said it was practical. I was younger and naive. Oliver looked up from his book. It was May. A lot can happen in 7 months. I laughed and started dinner while Nathan chopped vegetables. There was no moment when this routine had officially become ours. It had accumulated the same way everything else had. My charger still lived beside the couch, except now there was another one upstairs. Half a shelf in the bathroom held my things. The refrigerator contained the coffee creamer Nathan never used but always remembered to buy. I still had my apartment, although I spent more nights here than there. We had decided not to rush simply because being together felt easy. Nathan had spent too many years believing safety came from controlling the future. We were learning that commitment could be deliberate without being hurried. After dinner, Oliver carried his plate to the sink and returned to his novel. Can I read this part out loud? Nathan and I both stopped. A year earlier, those words would have sounded impossible. Your choice, I said. Oliver began. His voice was steady. He reached a difficult word, paused, sounded it out, corrected himself, and continued without apology. Nathan stood beside me at the counter. I felt his hand find mine. Neither of us said anything until Oliver finished the chapter. 33 pages, he announced. Show off, I said. You made me this way. I accept responsibility. Oliver closed the book and headed upstairs to get ready for bed. Nathan watched him leave, then looked at me. Do you remember the first day? You mean when you walked into my reading room and told me not to make him read something again? Nathan winced. I was hoping you had forgotten that. I am a librarian. Remembering things is another one of our many responsibilities. You are never letting that go. Absolutely not. He smiled and pulled me gently closer. He is different now. He worked hard. So did you. So did you. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Me? You learned to wait 5 whole seconds before supplying a word. Personal growth. I glanced toward the shelf holding Melissa's book. She would be proud of him. Nathan followed my gaze. His expression softened. Yeah, I think she would. There was no discomfort in the silence that followed. Melissa belonged to Oliver's story and Nathan's story. Loving Nathan had never required me to erase anything that came before me. We had simply kept writing. Nathan squeezed my hand. One more chapter? I looked toward the stairs. Oliver is supposed to be getting ready for bed. I was not talking about his book. I smiled. That was almost romantic. Almost. Civil engineers have limitations. You have been saving that joke for a year. Worth it. He laughed, then kissed my forehead and returned to the sink. I picked up our 2 mugs and placed them beside a third cup Oliver had used for hot chocolate. Once, I had entered this house because a boy needed help reading one sentence. Then I stayed for tacos. After that came Tuesdays, Thursdays, a green mug, a jacket hook, difficult conversations, and a key that eventually stopped feeling borrowed. I had thought belonging would arrive as some enormous moment when everything became certain. Instead, it arrived quietly, through hundreds of ordinary choices repeated until they became a life. Oliver had learned that getting one word wrong did not mean the story was over. Nathan had learned that loving someone without guarantees did not make that love a mistake. And I had learned that sometimes staying for dinner was simply how you discovered where you wanted to stay.